The two most underrated herbs when it comes down to lowering glucose. Now, this first one is one that I've talked about on this channel before in different categories. Personally, I find it to be one of the most potent things that we really should be looking at, not just for glucose modulation, but for sleep, but for overall fatty acid oxidation. There's a lot of reasons to be looking into it. So let's go ahead and dive in. After today's video, I popped a link down below for Sundays. If you have pups, if you have dogs, I definitely recommend you check them out. It's the first ever human grade dog food. I've got 3 dogs. Maybe you don't know that about me. At one point I had 4. Big dog family here. So we really care about our dogs. And when it comes down to food, I definitely recommend you check this stuff out. So it's created by a veterinarian that was really seeking better quality food. So it's all air dried, human grade, which means if you wanted to take a bite of it yourself, I don't know if you really want to, you could. It's that good of quality. And my dogs absolutely love it. And we've got a 14-year-old dog, a 12-year-old dog, and a new pup, and they all eat it. So anyhow, I popped that link down below that'll save you some cashola on them if you want to check them out. So first line of the description, directly below this video, there's a special link and a special code for you to save some money on Sunday's dog food. So this first one is ginseng. Now, there are different categories of ginseng. There's American ginseng, there's Korean ginseng. Typically, I recommend the Korean ginseng. There's just more data to back it up. Now, when it comes down to how it affects glucose, it's very fascinating. Ginseng seems to have a profound effect specifically on postprandial glucose. So postprandial glucose means what happens after we eat. When we think of glucose, we think what's happening all the time with our chronically high levels of blood sugar. But we have to realize when we look at an average of our blood sugar, we are going to drive up the average more by having huge spikes after we eat than just being chronically high all the time, right? So if we can reduce the postprandial spikes, then we can reduce HbA1c and our long-term glucose much more. Now, there was a study published in the European Journal of Clinical Nutrition that was fascinating because it took a look at subjects consuming 1 gram of ginseng per meal per day. So they basically had them consume ginseng with a meal. Now, in this case, they were 24 type 2 diabetics, and they did this in a crossover design. So they did this for a period of time, then they washed out. They had a period where they recovered and let their body come back to baseline, and then the people that did placebo crossed over and did the ginseng. They found invariably that ginseng had a huge effect, a 20% reduction in postprandial glucose. That didn't occur in placebo, even through crossover. But they also found that longer term, there is a big decrease in HbA1c. So we have to ask ourselves, okay, what's the potential mechanism here? Now, full disclaimer, this isn't the only study on ginseng. Like, there are studies on Korean ginseng and American ginseng in different categories as far as insulin resistance and glucose. What they tend to think with this one is that it increases what is called glucose-dependent insulin secretion. So that's the ability for the pancreas to produce enough insulin, the right amount of insulin, when there is just enough glucose present. So basically, they're able to it's able to see the glucose and produce the right amount of insulin. Now let's talk about this other one. I've talked about this in other videos, but this is another one. It's an Indian herb, and this one's called Gymnema. And I've talked about it in a few videos. Literally means sugar blocker in Hindu. Now, there was a study that was published in Ethnopharmacology, took a look at 22 subjects. They gave them 400 milligrams of this Gymnema stuff, and they found after 18 to 20 months, that there was a significant reduction in their fasting glucose, their fasting insulin, and their HbA1c. So much so that even 5 of the participants were able to stop their meds. Now, the way that this worked, and I've talked about this before, is it basically helped the liver recognize that there was glucose in the bloodstream and thereby able to facilitate the proper response from the pancreas. The reason that I like ginseng and Gymnema so much is A, they work upon different axes, but also they're just herbs. We're not talking anything crazy. And again, we have to understand that when we look at pharmacology in the first place, so many of the amazing drugs and things that we have developed in Western medicine over the centuries have come as a result of understanding what's happening in plants and what's happening in phytonutrients and phenolic compounds. This might just be one of those things that's new and emerging that can change how we control our glucose for good. I'll see you tomorrow.